Alright, today's target will be multiple representations of relations and functions. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to recognize whether a relation is a function. We'll talk about the definitions of both relations and functions. And you will be able to represent a function as a mapping, a table, a graph, and a set of ordered pairs. So that's what we're going to look at today. So let's start by talking about what is a relation and what is a function. A relation is any set or group of ordered XY pairs. There's no rules to it, there's nothing that has to follow, it's just any set. So you could pick any group of XY pairs that you wanted to, so we could go 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, -2, 0, 10, and so on. Sorry about that. Now, it can be any size. So it could be a set of 2 ordered pairs, it could be 10, it could be 100, it could be 1,000. But it's just any set of ordered XY pairs. That's a relation. Now a function is a little bit more specific. A function is a relation where each x value is paired with a unique y value, the unique being the important part. What this means is that in a function, you cannot have an x value that's paired with 2 different y values. Okay? So for example, if you look at the previous relation that we came up with, this relation has a 1 paired with both a 3 and a -2. So as a result, this is not a function. Okay? Now you can have the same y repeated. The y values aren't important, it's the x values that are important. You cannot have a repeated x value or an x value that's paired with more than one y values. So for example, you could have a function that looks like this. So this is a function. It is a function because there are no repeated x values. Okay? Each x value has only one y value that it's connected to. The y's can repeat. Every x value can go to the same y value. That's okay. But the x values cannot repeat. Another example of a function might look like this. So once again, this is a function because there are no repeated x values. Each x value is paired with a different, a unique y value. So that's what we're looking here. You have to be able to recognize is a set of ordered pairs, is it a relation or a function? And we're also going to look at different representations. You have to be able to tell from each of those representations, is it a relation or is it a function? Oh my gosh, what's going on here? Once again, I'm sorry about that. All right, so here we've got the first example, the first representation that we're going to use for relations and functions. That's an ordered pair, just a group of ordered pairs. We've seen this, we just did this. So here's 2 examples, and I want to make sure that you write each of these down because we're going to keep using these. We're going to represent these in multiple ways. So we've got example 1 and example 2. Once again, make sure you write them down. So we're going to move on and use them and represent them. But before we do that, I want to look at and say, okay, which of these is a function and which of these is not a function. So take a second, look at the two, decide. I want you to pause the video now and decide which one you think is a function and which one you think is not a function. Once you decide to go ahead and play, go ahead and hit play and see if you were right. Okay. Hopefully you noticed that in this first one, that 1 is repeated. The 1 is paired with both a 3 and it's paired with a 4. Therefore, this is not a function. Whereas in the second one, there are no repeated x values. Therefore, it is a function. Okay? So the second representation we're going to look at is called a mapping. So we're going to map example 1. And when we do a mapping, you need two ovals. The first oval is going to represent your x values. Second oval is going to represent your y values. Now when you do this, you want to put your x values in numerical order. So our x values were 0, 1, 2, and 5. Now we had multiple 1s there, but I'm only going to put 1, because all I wanted to put is the different x and y values. So we had 4 different x values. We had a 0, we had a 1, we had a 2, and a 5. Now once again, I'm using the examples from the previous page, so if you didn't copy them down, rewind the video, copy them down, and then catch back up. Same thing with the y values. We want to put them in order. So here we had a -1, we had a 2, we had a 3, the 3 was repeated, and then we had a 4. Okay? So those are all our possible x's and all possible y's. Now with the mapping, what we want to do is we want to draw a line. We want to connect the x values with the y value that it's paired with. So for example, we had the point 0, 3. So I'm going to draw a line from the 0 pointing to the 3, saying that I'm connecting that 0 with the 3. The 1 was connected with both the 3. So draw a line from the 1 to the 3. It was also connected to the 4. So I'm going to draw a line from the 1 to the 4. The 2 is connected to the -1. And then the 5 was connected to the +2. So that's a mapping. Each x value has a line drawn from that x value to the y value that it's paired with. Remember that this was not a function. And if you look here at this entry, notice that there are 2 lines coming from that x value. That's telling you that this is not a function. If there's multiple lines coming from your x values, it is not a function. Let's compare that with example 2. So once again, 2 ovals, x values and y values. So x's here we had -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. For our y values, we had -6, 2, 3, and 5. So once again, we want to pair everything up. So the -2 was paired with the 5. Remember, we have the point -2, 5. The -1 was paired with the 3. 0 was paired with a 2. We had 1, -6. And then lastly, we had 2, 2. Okay? So notice here, this is a function. So each of those x values has only one line coming out of it. All right. Next up, we're going to have a table. So we've used tables of values before. Tables of values, we have an x column and we have a y column. Okay? So once again, in your x column, you want to put your x values in order, and you don't want to repeat. So in our x column, our x's, and we're going to go back to that first example. Okay, so this is example 1. Our x values, we had 0, we had 1, we had 2, and we had 5. Now in the y column, we're going to pair them up. So the 0 was paired with the 3. The 1 was paired with both a 3 and a 4. The 2 was paired with a -1. And the 5 was paired with a 2. So you'll notice that we put our x values in order. but our y values had to be paired with our x values, so the y values won't necessarily be in order. Once again, you notice this is one that was not a function, so we can see here that the 1 in the x column is paired with 2 different y values. Okay, so this is what tells us, this is the key that tells us this is not a function. Let's compare that with example 2. In example 2, we had -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 as our x values. -2 was paired with a 5. -1 was paired with a 3. 0 was paired with a 2. 1 was paired with a -6. And 2 was also paired with a 2. So there, you notice that each x value is paired with only one y value in the y column. So as a result, that's a function. Hopefully at this point we're seeing the relationship, we're seeing the differences between relations and functions. We've got one more representation to look at, and that's with a graph. So with a graph, all we're going to do is we're going to plot the points. So in example 1, we had a point at 1, 3. So we're going to plot that point. We had a point at 2, -1. We had 1, 4. Oh, sorry, that's not correct. 1, 4 should be right there. We had 0, 3. And we had 5, 2. So there are the 5 points that make up our relation for example number 1. Now you'll notice with a graph that if we have 2 points that are stacked on top of each other, it's not a function. This is called the vertical line test. So in other words, if you were to draw a vertical line up and down the graph, if that vertical line crosses through 2 or more points, it's not a function. Let's look at example 2. Example 2, we had -2, 5. We had 2, 2. We had 0, 2. We had -1, 3. And we had 1, -6. Now you'll notice that each of these is on a different vertical line. There's no line here, no vertical line that I could draw that's going to cross through 2 or more of my points. Therefore, it passes the vertical line test and is a function. All right, so now it's your turn to try. What I want you to do is look at the following set of ordered pairs. First, I want you to tell me, is it a relation or is it a function? Once you do that, once you decide whether it's relation or function, I want you to tell me why or why not. Give me a little bit of reasoning, okay? And then lastly, I want you to go ahead and represent this relation or function as a mapping, a table, and a graph. So pause the video now. When you're finished, unpause it and check your answers. All right, here's your solution. First of all, this is a function, as there are no repeated x values. And then you can see I've represented it as a mapping, a table, and a graph. So that's it for today's lesson. Make sure you bring your notes to class tomorrow. If there's any questions, if you had anything that you weren't sure about during this video, please make a note of it so that you can ask me in class tomorrow and I can help clear up any confusion you might have.